wanted to write a book a couple weeks ago, and I started it finally a couple days ago, and I finally just finished writing the epitaph for the story, or you could call it, I guess you could call it chapter 1 because it's kind of the same thing, but I think it's the epitaph. And I'm going to read it to you guys now, but I'm going to do it in my garden because it's nicer out there than in here. The last few months, I've seldom escaped the murmurs in my head. Their constant whispering sang precariously around my mind in the dead of night. This inevitable chasm that surrounds me has been dubbed an escape from reality by society, but the way I see it, society has condemned me, delivering me directly into my own paradoxical nightmare. The demonic intonations that cling to my inner being, like talons of a vulture ripping scornfully through its corpse, now flood into obscurity, no longer bound by the dimensions of realism, taunting me. These voices quiver with excitement as they circulate the eternal darkness, penetrating and seducing me like serpents, riddling to me the sickness of humanity and how it has poisoned my very heart. They allude to their disgust at my weakness and passivity, invariably mocking my existence and challenging the worth of my life. The beauty of the mind's power to isolate oneself has always resonated personally. However, the power of one's mind to override the conscious simultaneously petrifies me to my very core. Reality is but a distraction shrouding your internal matters. You can never really escape such a presence unless you take it upon yourself to find a more enduring state of withdrawal, perhaps a more permanent occupation. There is a stained glass window encompassed by an old metal frame, painted black and peeling in numerous places. Just below it lays a crumbling stone ledge peeking outside the window, jutting out just far enough to accommodate myself. For many years I have, shall we say, escaped from reality by leaning perilously out of the window in hopes of freeing my mind from the daily struggles of life. As I have grown, I have come to believe that the freedom and fluidity of the wind has captured my darkest moments, grazing my cheeks coolly as my demons are whisked away into oblivion. Living at the top of an apartment complex, I must say, has its benefits at times. Recently, this small frame of liberty has become much more than an outlet of despair, but rather an inexplicable sancta sanctorum. For some unfathomable reason, when I place myself in this small passage, the voices inside my head dissipate to an absolute nothingness. I am alone, basking in the silence. It paralyses me. How can one describe such a feeling? The instantaneous reality of being profoundly alone terrifies me, yet at the same time fills me with gratitude. I feel as if I am on the edge of serendipity, yet if I lean too far forward could drift into insanity. These momentary glimpses of certain isolation solidify my composition of actions. It's rather typical, does it not? This microcosm in which I have created to free my mind of conscious thought has become the penultimate nail in my coffin. Some may call it ironic, perhaps, the mere place I kept to feel safe, now subverted into my cellar. It may seem rather impulsive jumping out of a window, although very effective. However, society may interpret this as something of a cowardly approach to life. Surely my death would undergo the exasperating rituals of the who's and the whys, yet the umbrella conclusions will always point towards the same ideas of depression or insanity, like many who have suffered the same fate I have chosen indefinitely. I say that courage has an interpretive meaning, yet truthfully I feel that it is much more of a persona. It has a physical presence in each and every one of us specific to our needs, only revealing itself when courage is true. I did many techniques and approaches for killing myself. Originally I had set my sights on an overdose of some sort, as it is a simple tactic. However, I knew that the adrenaline would only last so long, and with every tablet I ingest, my courage would cease to persevere. That, and the deliberations of failure, crept into my mind, leaving me as nothing more than a vegetable forced to rely on the loved ones around me. How can I be so selfish? There's one thing actually killing yourself compared to the excruciating humiliation of existing but no longer living at all. This then followed by the all-too-sharp reality of desperation to be freed of the internal prison created. I then turned to the idea of slitting my wrists. This method was quickly eliminated as I knew the sight of trickling crimson would have caused me to faint and become discovered, leading to the inevitable rehabilitation process I assuredly wished to avoid. Given the state of my ill-thought-out plans, I turned to more innovative methods. I'd always been fascinated by the death of Sylvia Plath, regarding hers as a rather poetic and episodic ends to a means. Sticking one's head in an oven, I believed, took great courage and the outcome quite advantageous for her. Suicide is a selfish act in itself, but ruining a perfectly good oven was out of the question for me. Surely my parents would have enough to deal with after my death. Why would I add on the trouble of having to purchase a new one, when we have so little money presently? I had never learnt to swim when I was younger. Living in London, my parents never saw any real need for it. If I ever fell in, someone would save me. I had once tried an impulse to drown myself in the bath, however instincts unfortunately got the better of me as my lungs screamed for air and the bubbles fled to the surface, breaking free of their liquid trap my willpower could no longer sustain. But if I were to paddle to the centre of a lake or river out of sight, attach a rock to my foot perhaps, and casually let myself sink in the watery grave, then I could succeed without any collateral damage. Eventually my mind wavered over the simple idea of jumping out of a window. This process was foolproof. I was high enough up that the impact would instantaneously kill me, and all I needed was a split-second decision to let go. I would have no deadline, no predates or preparations. All I needed to do was close my eyes, only to slip away into an infinite flight. Only then could I feel content. Tonight, I had decided it was time. There is a sense of harmony which glides through the atmosphere. The moon, my only companion, I bask in his hazy presence as he watches over me on this most audacious occasion. Never had I thought I would reach this point where my life had become so meaningless and vacant, my mind a vortex of distressed silence. My fingers are coiled round each side of my window frame, my only lifeline. How peculiar it all seems when it comes down to it, taking one's life. Under the watchful eyes of the knowledgeable stars, I realise just how minuscule and unimportant I am. The sheer power of the universe is unjust. I shan't be missed in this dynamic cosmos. I close my eyes gently and sigh heavily, releasing my former woes into the world. I am at peace. I always like getting positive criticism back on the book. It does need a lot of work, especially it's not a book yet, it's a chapter, it's like 2 pages long, so yeah, all positive criticisms really helpful, and now I'm going to give you the kind of overall of the book. I was deciding what I wanted the book to be about. I did a lot of googling and I found that teenage suicide rates have gone up again, and I always think it's quite a pressing matter. What with I know a lot of people who are suffering from it, so that was where I'm aiming the book at. And I've always, like, we all have those suicidal thoughts ourselves. I mean, I can vouch for that. So I thought that was a good way to go down. However, I think most people who get the thoughts never really feel like they can talk to anyone about it, because I don't think anyone's going to understand. And I felt like hopefully by writing this book, you can see the inner workings of an individual's kind of succession into suicide and what they're feeling and what they're going through, or kind of I'm going to draw from personal experience and just kind of people's opinions and what I think would go through the head of someone who was thinking about suicide. I'll tell you the context of the book because I want that to be a secret. I'm not telling you guys yet. You have to wait and see in like 10 years when I finish it, maybe. But the overall idea is that she wants to commit suicide, and she's going to have this last minute kind of epiphany as she's jumping, and that's going to be a kind of big surprise ending, but we'll see when you read it. I just said she. I know I want her to be a she in this book, but she's not going to have a name. She is going to be the narrator, and I'm going to leave her completely ambiguous so that anyone can put themselves in her shoes, whether it is a guy or a girl, just so that they can really kind of get into the head what goes through people's minds, what they think about when they're suicidal. I think there is going to be a love story in there. There might not be, I'm not sure yet. I think there probably will be, but it's not really pivotal in the story. It's more just to kind of give the story some bulk and kind of add more context to the story, I think is how it's going to go. But I also forgot to say that the name of my story is going to be called Peace, which you might have been able to pick up from the first moment character at the end when I say I'm at peace. Because the epitaph I did at the start is going to jump right to the end. I'm going to use it again in the end, which is I'm at peace, and then I'm going to do something which is going to be cool. So anyway, I really hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to get your criticism back in like a video or something, or whatever you feel like, but I had fun writing it, and I started writing the next chapter. It's all very grey and dreary, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Get a fab view of my garden because I don't really want to film myself reading it because that'd be really weird.
You get to see lots of dogs like that, probably yelling and ruining my video. So this should be fun.
I'm going to tell you the details of what's going to happen in the book because that's a secret, you know, I'm not telling you yet. But as a general rule, from the first paragraph, you're meant to think she's going to cause suicide.